And then the other one is my hairdresser, Geneva.
know,
I'm seeing her.
Is
on
there a
Saturday.
way
She
to
didn't
move
believe
that
We didn't know the date.
board
It was.
Well, yeah.
So she's, I don't know if she'll
over
do an updo or she'll. just
somewhere
get
like
that.
it's the audience?
And then I'm working with
That's
Garden
big.
Gate
Yeah.
on the other thing.
I sent a letter too.
You did? Must be plugs over there.
When did
Then
you
we have
send
to,
those?
but yeah, they might block him the end of last.
No, no, you
Maybe
can put it, you can
So
put
if
it
you
like in the
follow up-
doorway.
The letters there.
Cause I usually go. that's
So
who I usually
that
use,
would be
but
the
I'll
whole
go with that.
audience.
Did you do any of
And
the
we could
Webster
see
ones
who's
at all?
on Zoom.
I did a.
But
a limo
but not
service,
now,
but
obviously.
I don't
Maybe
think
it's just
they're gonna
all of this would have to
respond, and I
move with
did a
it.
helicopter.
The
Oh,
speakers.
I see.
I just thought that
Oh,
would be.
you could.
awesome.
I could sit over there.
Well,
Look at her computer and you'll know
No,
who's
the
on.
name of the company.
I thought he was running.
I-
Yeah, but it's just, you must have it up now.
I said.
So you gotta be there and do it like that.
Well, it's just that they would, you know, all be. Like,
And I
don't
did
usually-
nails.
The meeting to order now at what time?
6:06.
6:06.
Saturday morning.
Okay. Pledge of allegiance. Bill.
I've been waiting for this moment.
Yeah.
Screw up.
I pledge allegiance to
To the flag, the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
I'm doing delay.
Yeah, I know. That's coming through clear, Tom.
I'm sorry.
You can hear me?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Feel better.
Got my Barry White voice.
Yeah, so you can join us in person on Monday, so take care of yourself this weekend.
Thank you.
Okay, citizens' comments. We have a citizen who needs to make a comment. Yes, Mr. Citizen.
Perfect 122 Buzzell Road. This is sort of speaking to you because the board members now, at some point in the future, this will be in your past. And you're all here now, and if you have a district that, as we talked about last time, is one of the poorest performers in the state. After you leave this experience, I think you're gonna want to look back on it. Hopefully, and you've got two things that you're gonna be able to see when you look back. You came in with a poorly performing district and it stayed the same. Or you changed it and made it better. So instead of being one of the poorer performers, maybe be one of the best performers in the state. Some sort of just challenging you to fight like hell to make sure you get the budget you need. This is gonna be a tough, the magnitude of the increase. You know, some of my fellow board of finance members are gonna have a real problem with it, but it's gonna take a lot of effort on all your part to get this thing in place. You just gotta have it. The kids deserve it, they need it, support. So I'm sort of challenging you to come up with whatever ideas you can come up with to try to make sure this happens. And some of them are already discussed. Attending the board of finance meetings. You normally do that, of course, when the school budget is presented. But what I've observed in the past is when the school budget is presented, the board of finance listens politely. 3 or 4 meetings later, when we're ending the budget process, the audience is very small. The school budget gets whacked. So I would urge you to come not just to the school budget presentation, but toward the end of the board of finance budget preparation to make your voices heard, to make sure that you get what you need to run the school system. I was thinking about the movie Network. I don't know if you've seen it or not. It's an old movie, but in it, I'm mad as hell. I'm not going to take it anymore. It was the big charge from that movie, that expression. And I think that's the way a thought of mine anyway, what you've got to do when this is being presented to the Board of Finance. That you are mad as hell, you're not gonna take it anymore. You need the money to run the school. As far as presentations go, I like numbers, I'm a numbers guy. The suggestion, I think it was Matt said that, suggested that he liked the inflation to increase the budget over the years. I like that too, I think it's a great one. Also, you might want to cover the actual dollars that were cut. It was mentioned, I think Jessica brought it up. The dollars that were cut from the original request to what you finally got. And maybe not just 1 year, but maybe over the last 5 years or 10 years, how many dollars have been cut from the proposals that are from the school board?
Jess actually has that. She's shown it to me.
Oh, yeah, I have it
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
I have
yeah,
it too,
yeah.
yes.
I think I'd also like to suggest that you emphasize cost reduction. I call cost reduction real business world, so to speak. What has the school done to improve your lot on your own? Not just asking the town for more money, but the things that have been done in this district that have helped reduce the cost of the taxpayer of the town. I don't think like the Bradley program has been tremendous.
Transition.
Combining insurance coverages, finding new providers in the past, sharing tech resources, assuming the cost of buses are the equation, and not just list what those items, but if you can quantify them, I think that would help make an impact to help my fellow board members understand what you're facing. I was impressed is the wrong word. I was astonished, I guess, by the number of instances of disciplinary action that are required, how much time it takes from the staff. I think those kinds of numbers would be helpful to help the citizens and the Board of Finance understand where a lot of effort is going, where a lot of the administrative effort is going, and teacher effort is going. So when you hear that 7 students in the high school today had a disciplinary problem, that's, to me, I mean, that's telling me something. Or I believe it was 42 at the high school levels of interaction by the principal were required versus 17 last year. Those kinds of numbers tell me that school today isn't the same school that we all attend. Teacher size, I don't know if this is a good story or not, but you mentioned that 14 or 15 would be a suggested number for a reasonable size class. We're operating at roughly twice that. That's gotta be, at least for me, that's disturbing. Maybe we can't get to 14 or 15 this coming year, but what we ought to be moving in that direction and not in the other direction. Anyway, those are just some thoughts. I was thinking about this a lot in the last couple of days, because this is super important. This is our future, not just for Thompson, for our country. And if we neglect it, just shame on us. It's my reason.
Can I ask Mr. Herbert a question? I don't know if this would be beneficial for the Board of Finance, but maybe it would be more for the community. Usually we have a slide that says the amount of money for the school, so much is it state and federal money, and so much is what the taxpayers are paying. And to me, when I first saw that, I couldn't believe that. You know, and it's like, it's not the whole 20 million, you know, and but the only thing is, we can't say the state and federal is free money. Because people right away say, well, wait a minute, that's my taxes that went in there. But as somebody had said on Winnie, I believe it was Danielle. Yeah, but if we don't get our money back that we paid into the state and the federal, some other town will. So I don't know if that would be important to say, you know, look, even though it's, let's say 20 million, 10 million of it isn't coming from the taxpayers, it's from the state and the feds. Do you think that might make an
Well,
impact?
again, my was to sort of demonstrate to the audience that school itself is taking all sorts of steps
The
to reduce
grants,
the burden on the property taxpayers of Thompson.
Yeah, the
It's
grants,
not just letting it happen, it's not just giving you more money every year. It's looking for grants, getting grants, all sorts of things that you guys are doing. I think granting program is the first one comes to
oh,
mind.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's why we got a slide on
And,
that
you know,
one.
It's not like you're just sitting here sending more money, it's, hey, we're doing more in our share. And so our request is very reasonable, and we're not just asking for it, it's just part of the participation from the school, it's the school administration, as well as the taxpayers, it's a joint venture. But it's not, we're not just asking taxpayers. We're doing everything we can to help make the school. I think we're saying the same thing.
Okay,
Um,
thank you.
I just wanted to mention, so Kathleen and I and maybe others did the cave workshop today. That was about communicating within a board, communicating to parents, communicating to the community. And just one of the things that I think maybe to kind of pitch the whole survey thing a little bit more is that they were saying, especially in towns that are a little disjointed in terms of there's always a pro-school faction and a maybe not so pro-school faction, to find ways to kind of engage all parties, not just parents and staff and students, but to engage the people that maybe aren't on board, to make them feel like they're involved in the process, to have them have a little bit of stake in the game and a buy-in. And perhaps this survey could be that way to engage with the people that, you know, maybe feel like they aren't being heard. And they can weigh in on what is important to them. I don't know. And then the other thing to you, if we did have a survey, you know, we'd obviously have some data that was recovered from that may, you know, show the town's feelings either way as to how they want to spend their money. But would something like, not a petition, but maybe like a petition, something that maybe townsfolk can either sign literally or, you know, apply their name and address to a list saying, I support the school budget as proposed by the school and the board. And literally have, you know, as many parents and staff and family members and whatever, that we can then present this 300, 400, 500 person document to say, these are all the people that support this budget. You know, are you listening to the town when you cut it? I mean, would that be impactful to them?
I think attending the meetings, the survey with hopefully results that would support the budget.
Yeah.
And that, you know, I don't have any magic answers.
No, I just,
Like,
yeah,
yes, do that, and, you know, because I think that would be another plus.
Right.
But it shouldn't stop there. Let you guys try to think of other things to do.
right.
Kind of stuck in the middle of what we've done in the past, maybe just try to do maybe more of it, a little harder kind of thing. That would be my thought, and the survey's a good idea, and maybe I'm sure there's some other ideas out there about what we could do.
To your idea about the petition, the more, if we could get 500 or 600 signatures, it would be terrific, because every year they say, oh, I've been listening to the townspeople. Who knows? They probably talked to 5 or 6 people,
Right.
you know, who knows who they've been talking to?
In some ways, we've seen some of that support by the most recent passing of the
Oh, yeah.
proposals. I mean, many members of the board certainly had questions, and some were clearly against the track. Oh, I'm talking about the board of finance. But the townsfolk said yes.
Right. Right.
So, I mean, that is an indication, hey, it's not, you know, no, I don't want to raise my taxes regardless. People willing to do it.
Yeah.
That's a little indicator, and again, surveys, and again, I'm sure there are other ideas as well.
I think my frustration as a superintendent has been that the board that decides what gets out to the voters is 6 people versus, and I know that's the Board of Finance's job, right? In every
6 old white
community,
guys, yeah.
right?
No, it's
Um,
not.
but-
No, it is not.
But
I looked
this-
it up. That's not their job.
But the frustration is that our families are, you know, if it went out to the public, I bet it would pass. If people understood where the monies were going. I think that's always the biggest bugaboo here, that there is a misconception that we're sitting on a bag of money up at central office
Being
somewhere.
wasted.
And yeah, so, and you talk to people, and there are parents still who also don't want property taxes going up and that kind of thing, but. I think the survey is a good idea, and at the end of Survey Monkey, there's easy to put in a question. If you support the budget, please put your name and address here. And then we can run a report just on that question and, you know, at least have some data there. So that's easy to do. You know, I don't know how much of this presentation people read. I know when we do our presentation to the community, there's not usually that many people there. So no one hears the explanation of special ed. Steve has heard the explanation of, you know, Chris being here and explaining special ed. That's a big driver, right? But most people don't hear that, and most people are not gonna read that. They're gonna go right to this.
Right.
And that's how they make their decision. And that's unfortunate, but this is the year. I mean, I think you're right, you know, I'm mad, you know, and I'm not gonna take it anymore. Cause I'm sort of at that place, right? I need to tell them, I can't operate a district anymore like this.
You can't do your job.
I can't do it, and it's having an impact on students. When you look at the last slide on the back, which, and I don't know if we want to keep it, but, you know, just looking at smarter balance assessment results from 16-17 to now, basically flatlined, we're still trailing state average. A lot of work has happened behind those numbers, but the bottom line here is that we're flatlined because we've been flat just about all right. So, I mean, if we're gonna get out of this, and we have to, we're a sanctioned district, we're an opportunity district. We have 5 years to get out of that designation, and this town doesn't deserve that designation. The students don't, the teachers don't. So there is work to be done, but if you see these scores, it does tell a story. And so, I don't know.
Well, my comments are, I have every belief that the staff at the school is committed, wants to do the best job they possibly can, wants to make things better. But you get thwarted if you just don't have enough bodies, or you don't have the resources to do the job. So none of this is a comment about the efforts being.
We know that.
Not at all, but it's just need to get the funding. You can't take it anymore.
No.
Because, I mean, the enthusiasm from the board, I noticed it, I commented on it at our last meeting, this is fantastic. It's just got to stay there, and you come up with other ideas about how we can convince the town that this is appropriate spending of the taxpayers' money.
One of the problems is the Board of Finance, when they get to the end of the meetings, that's when it's school break. So we've
Yes.
got people
Yeah,
going on
yes,
vacations
I
and
know that's-
everything, and that's why the audience gets down so low.
You're
You know?
right. And they used to schedule us during that
Yeah.
week, so now we ask them not to.
Oh, good.
But again, and I don't know whether that was coincidental or deliberate, but it was disappointing because it would be at the school vacation time, people were traveling, whatever, and so the turnout for the people who were interested in the schools ended to be a little low.
Yep.
Which didn't help. I don't know if it would have made any difference at the end of the day or not, but
Yeah.
it would be
So that-
better, more people were there.
That's not happening this year. It's not during school vacation week, or is it?
Well, we request that they do the schools on not that. week.
My concern is the last meeting prior to.
That's
preparation
right.
of Budget. That's the one where, you know, when you make your presentation, everybody's smiling and not my shop. But the last meeting that the Board of Finance holds is typically the one where some very tough calls are made. Me anyway, and you know, sometimes those are not well attended by, and I don't think it's not school's fault or anything, not well attended by schools.
Right.
I have a
I don't know
question.
what the answer is, but if you can go there even on those days, it would be great.
For slide number 15, the budget history ones, would it be possible to maybe put to somewhere, what the actual mill rate increase was? For each of those years?
I'm sure.
Just because I
sure we
think
can get
pe-
that.
some of them were flat, some of them were less, so just because there was a percentage change increase, doesn't mean necessarily that the taxpayers had a change,
Gotcha.
in the mill rate.
Is
We
it
can get that.
possible we could put like some of these out and the did you knows that
Yes,
go out, and put some
That's a
of
good
these little
idea.
things?
people like those, did you
Okay.
know?
Yeah.
Heather?
I know one of the problems that I've heard from people, when my kids were in school, I didn't mind paying the taxes for the, for the school, but now my kids are not in school anymore, so why should I pay? What they don't realize is even if you figured out how much taxes they paid when their kids were in school, it still doesn't even cover their child's education,
No.
And I would love to turn around and tell the people this, but I don't want to be rude or mean, but it's when I hear that. I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
No, of course.
But that's how a lot of the people feel in this town.
Oh, sure, I know, Tom.
Steve, thank you again for coming to the meeting. I know you're only one of, 6 members. One of the interesting things, Steve, and I'm not sure how the Board of Finance changes this, but the Board of Finance, year after year after year, has looked at the budget, every budget. But for the first 3 or 4 weeks, your group analyzes a $1,000 line item to ad nauseum. And then when it comes time for the Board of Education, we don't get the same coverage or review process, but yet we're one of the largest budgets in this entire town. So I don't know how we change that. Rather than sitting there for 4 weeks, exhausting $1,000 on one line item. Not that the $1,000 is not important, but I would just hope that the Board of Finance gives the education portion a little bit more respect and a little more time. Thank you.
No, I don't disagree with what you're saying at all. We do spend a lot of time on very small amounts. Some people get very passionate about those little things, but it does seem like sometimes it's been an inordinate amount of time on $1,000 item or $100 item for that matter. So I don't know the answer though, to be honest with you.
Well, Tom, that they take too literally that they can't change our budget. They can only change the bottom line. They can't change line item by line item. But they could ask some questions about the line items.
Yeah, I guess, Kathleen, I totally agree with you. If they're not going to come to our meetings and understand our budget and to the full extent of what our budget represents, then you're absolutely right. I would hope that it's more question, answer, dialogue, but it's also counterproductive that we have to continually repeat it when we're doing these budget workshops, and that's the intent.
Correct. I agree with you, Tom. I mean, there's no reason why they can't ask some questions as to why this went up, as to why that went up, as to, they could go through our budget. They just can't change line items like they do with the town's budget. Take, $50 out of this, $100 out of that. That's ridiculous. But anyway. How much did we get in ARPA funds?
1.2 million.
Okay, 1.2 million. Thank you. And then
Also, Kathleen and Melinda, with the grants that were just passed last week, does that change our overall budget?
For the town. Because I think this would be a Bill question. They're gonna have to bond for that. So it'll be a change on the town side, right, in the budget?
Yes.
That's the town.
Oh, I thought there was one that was an educational one that came through last week. Did I misunderstand it?
The only item I remember, Tom, is this bill. Bill Burchett informed us that the security grant monies had been announced at the state level. It was $15 million, I believe,
Yeah,
of security grant money, and Bill is already off and running on applying for those monies.
Okay, so that would go through the town though, not us, right?
And it would offset, well, 68.2% of the security project. If we
Okay.
were to successfully win it, which would be great news. But that's very early.
And the
there any way
ECS
to
money
determine-
isn't going to change,
Sorry.
so that's
well, that's floating through the legislature. It
right.
might.
It possibly will.
It could, the ECS could change and how much reimbursement we get.
Is there any way to correlate the lack of funding over the last several years that have sunk us into this opportunity district status? So in terms of like, have we ever been in a status like this before? Because I don't think we have.
You
And I
have,
would, we have,
so Noveline told me
Yeah.
years ago, you were in this, this place. They didn't call it turnaround, or they didn't call it opportunity district back then, but it was when you started to look at your reading program and you upgraded the reading program. Remember that year? And she had the consultant in, the reading scores were very low, and we were one of those districts that were in that low performing bucket. The primary problem is that we've built up the reading department since I've come. We've moved, the board has moved positions around to put more reading specialists in. So when I came, we had 2.5. We now have 5 reading specialists in the district. So, I mean, we're going after the things that we know are gonna make a difference in the kids' lives and their achievement, but even this last slide, slide 16, it kind of shows you that. I mean, as much effort as we've put in, of course, we went down since 16, 17 in some areas, but I mean, we're not getting above state average. We're just staying where we're at. Some of it has to do with some resources that just weren't here. And you know, we're a human service business, so it's human capital that, you know, gets us where we need to be.
I also, I mean, with all that being said, you know, just our area being so economically depressed and the number of kids we have on these special plans, you know, that type of thing, their special education plan. I just think we are a unique area and we shouldn't be treated like the status quo. We have a lot of moving parts within this community that I think go against us. And in a negative, in economic status, you know, the income within a 1 family versus 2 family, there's a lot of other things. And it's, I mean, it's not something you're gonna fix right away, but I think I as a citizen of this town for my whole life, I'm extremely disappointed in the fact that if we were a subsidiary of a business and the town was the big business and the financial part of it was a working part, we would have people fired. You have to come together. We are all operating like so independently, and I'm grateful for Amy because she has become such a great partner for the school system. She's an advocate. She wants the best for us, but I'm very disappointed in the Board of Finance because I just don't think we have the representation of what our community is on that board. And, you know, I know a lot of the people on it, but I think when you don't have anything vested within the school system, you don't care as much. I don't have anything vested in the school system. I don't have children. I'm sitting on the board, but I can tell you, I care. I care because I see, I hear, I've been the last nearly 6 years understanding how the school system works within the community. And if you don't get the nitty-gritty of some of these things, you don't get it sitting on the Board of Finance because you don't understand that money is going to impact people's lives. And it's going to impact it, unfortunately, in the way we've been doing it, in a negative way, not in a positive way. And I do feel bad, Melinda, you were hired, I think, right before I came on board. And I'm sure you had goals and stuff that, you know, you wanted to do. You're not being given the tools to do that. And I feel bad about that because I think your heart, I hear you on the radio. I hear you advocating for the school. I hear you advocating for the community, but you can only stretch yourself so much as Dr. Mayo said himself, he's got a job to do, but he's doing all the discipline side of things, and he's not really getting to focus on what we hired him for. So I think we really have to start paying attention. And like you said, Steve, we have to push, and we have to push hard, because if we believe in our kids, we got to give them a better education. We're not giving them the education that kids need today. And it's a harder education. It's not an easy one.
And, one of the things is, does the Board of Finance or the town know what it means to be an opportunity district? I mean, you think of the word opportunity and that's like, whoa, I've got this opportunity to do something. You think it's something
I
good.
don't like the wording.
I don't like the
honestly.
wording
I
like
think it's
that.
the worst
So how
wording.
can people possibly know, because we're an opportunity district, what it means?
Yeah, and I've told them what that means. In other states, they call it a turnaround district. That's a Rhode Island tag. But there's sanctions with that. I mean, the state can come in, take over the school system, fire all the staff. I mean, it's not a good place to be in. And when you look at the communities that we're in company with, the other 9, I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me. I think we go back to Kim's presentation in the fall where she, says, we think our attendance data was miscalculated, misrepresented back in 16-17, or 17-18, that first year they took the data. We didn't have clean data here. I know that for a fact. So we're getting dinged on something that I feel is unfair. I will say that our students' progress has not progressed along as fast as I would have liked. It takes 3 to 5 years to write a ship. And I think COVID threw us off course. And that had an impact and still does have an impact, especially on behavior. But when we look at what's happening now and the data work that's happening and the real precise analysis of student outcomes that is alive and well in the schools now, teachers are killing themselves. Believe me, I'm telling you, there might be a handful of a few teachers that we need to support with more professional development, but the majority of our teachers are working really hard and paying really close attention to how a student is learning and how they're progressing, and they're taking all sorts of data. They have meetings upon meetings upon meetings to try to figure out, okay, I'm teaching it this way, maybe I need to try teaching it that way. And so there's a lot of that going on now that I could say 6 years ago was not happening. Leadership has a lot to do with that in the schools, and we see some really good work happening there. It's just that we slipped into this bad classification, and you're stuck with it, first of all, for 5 years. But I just met with the reading teachers today who are all also being Orton Gillingham certified. I can't even tell you the intense professional training they're going through and the hours upon hours that they're doing at home and on the weekends. They have to actually clock in 100 reading remedial sessions with kids either before school or after school, just to get that certification. We paid for the certification, but the work involved is phenomenal. Do I think it's going to have a tremendous impact on the district? It certainly is, but it's not going to happen tomorrow. This stuff takes time. And I think the problem is that what we've done, at least from my perspective, and I did it. So, okay, we got cut 200,000 from our original proposal. And I always put in an honest, accurate budget of what we needed. I pride myself on that. I never put extra money in a budget if I felt like this is what I needed to run the district. But what ended up happening is the fixed costs never got covered. We never got the additional money that we asked to even balance the budget. And then you need extra supports for kids, and there is no money. So you're sacrificing one position to get another because you think this is going to have a bigger bang for the buck. But that one you let go of was still very important. You had to make a decision, so we let go of that. And that's what's been happening. And now we're at a point where I've done all of that moving around. I know I have nowhere else to go. I don't know what to say. And if you want me to fix it, you need to give the schools the resources to make it happen. We
You know,
will not-
Melinda, you just raised a very good point. You know, when we're in town, and I believe the school is the largest employer in our town, if I'm not mistaken.
has to be.
So for a town that has no industry, this is basically our biggest asset, even though it's a liability on the town's accounting. With the school being the biggest employer, and for us not to support that employer, that's a shame. The second part of that is when we looked at the cost of our high school and people were saying, you know, close the high school and all that, we proved that it was more cost effective to have a school.
Right.
In addition to that, we still have to bus the students, which is a contract. And we have no negotiation power when it comes to enrollments. And we just saw local schools that just raised their enrollment rates, which that would be on the expense of us as taxpayers if we were outsourcing our students. The third thing is everybody wants their home values or car values to be at their highest level when it comes time, when they're appraised, when it comes time to be resold. When they don't want their values to be at their highest level is when it comes time to pay the tax man. And unfortunately, you can't have the best of both worlds, but it's time that we support the largest employer in our town if we have no industry to help offset any of these expenses, because that employer brings in a lot of revenue from not only workers spending money in town, but it also funds a lot of people that are in town that work for either the municipalities. That money comes back into tax revenue. So without the school, we lose another revenue source because our people are probably going to be moving out of town. In addition, our home values will then decrease because we do not have a resident school district, which will cause our interest rate, our mill rate to rise even higher. So just a little bit of analytical support, however we want to put that in writing.
Kathleen, I know that the student outcomes show the 21-22 year for the SBAC thing. But I know that they've been tested already, at least in the fall and then again recently.
No,
right?
that's NEWA scores.
Oh,
Those are,
Iowa,
that's
okay,
NEWA, that's different.
Okay.
You'll get, when I give you my, my evaluation update, I'll give you those, NEWA scores, but that's an internal assessment. It's not a state normed assessment.
Does it show valuable data though, to show that we are making progress?
It shows progress, from like the beginning of the year to the mid-year to the end of the year.
Mhm.
That's what I submit to the state for Opportunity District.
Right.
You know how they're monitoring us closely. We have another visit, virtual visit on March 10th. So they take that data, they do an analysis, and then they come back and they give us guidance on where you should go next. And so, the last visit was very positive. They also came and did in-class observations and gave us feedback. So, and then we're working with Betty Oscar pretty closely, and she did observations in the classrooms, and she's, made some really nice comments about how different it was from when she did the coherence and capacity audit my first year here to now, to see some nice changes, and really accolades to the faculty and staff. And she only did the elementary and the middle. But that, teachers are turning the corner and really, implementing best practice in the classroom.
Well, I'm just wondering if, because I know one of the sentiments that I'm seeing online is when people talk about, the school wants more money, they always kind of throw it in our face that, gosh, throw more money at a school that isn't performing, they haven't earned it, like that's the kind of comment that people are saying. And I'm just wondering that if the NEWA scores show that there is an incremental kind of uptick in performance, at least that would be some kind of data to convey that we are doing something.
We usually don't share that kind of internal, data that we're using to drive instruction. We can certainly do that, but I usually use the state assessments, right, because they're mandated and we're
It's just a
measuring.
shame that it's the 21-22, which is just coming out of COVID kind of year, whereas there's more data now with the NEWA from this year that I would hope would show something more promising.
I'll take a look at that. I'm gonna send it to you anyway, so you can take a look at it and see if it's something that we feel that we want to put out there. I mean, it's not secret.
Right.
Anybody can get that information. But what Kim's trying to find out, she has a meeting tomorrow with NEWA people. She just wants to know what the skill sets are at each testing point. Because if we're showing growth from November to January, are we measuring the same set of skills, or is NEWA designed to align closely to the curriculum? And so you might be teaching fractions in the first trimester, but are you teaching integers in the second? Like we just want to make sure what it's precisely testing at each interval. So that's a question tomorrow that she's going to ask. Because we want to analyze those scores. The primary reason she's all over it is because the last January and this January, her students took a dip. And she wants to know, okay, what are you actually testing them on? And why are my kids dipping? So mid-year they dip and then they come back up again. So we're not really sure why.
Right.
So, Bill, do you want to go over your
Sure.
update that you did?
Sure. So. Not a lot of changes from the last version, but the two main drivers were the addition of the high school. Sorry, Danielle, right now I have a mental.
Student
block against that.
behavior coordinator, we've decided to change
I have a
it
mental
to.
block,
That's a good one. I like that. Okay.
which, with a family plan of benefits is 119,000 020. And then the math interventionist in the middle school. Melinda and I talked that salary level over, I think it was Masters 5, we set it at, with benefits would be 87,140. I did remove the bus monitors. Kathleen, you had asked about the transportation line. With that out, it's at a 2% increase versus what I think we were showing 8 or 8.5%. So that's more in line with what expectations were. This brings us to a current proposed budget of 21.7 million, which is a $1.9 million increase from last year's budget, and with a mill rate impact of 2.45 mils.
A 9.5% increase over last year.
Correct.
Yeah.
Those drivers, we'll actually discuss the drivers, one of the components I assume we're gonna walk through the presentation again.
Yep.
But Melinda and I have spelled out the drivers in that presentation, so I guess we can focus on that when we get into the presentation.
Yeah, so we talked about those drivers last time, obviously special ed, and that's on slide 8. The funding cliff positions, then we added in the new positions because that is a big number, 206. The fuel and electricity is accurate. We talked about the inflation costs and then the salary increases. So that's the bulk of the increases.
Right. Those are the big drivers.
We made those adjustments in each of the school budget highlights and put the student behavior coordinator in the high school. We put the interventionist at the middle school. We put dollars associated with special education. We did not put dollars associated with each of the positions. We can certainly do that, Bill, because I know you have that information, so we can add that in the slide. And then the last two slides were what the board asked for last time was that budget history. I like adding the mill rate, so I think that will be interesting information to put in that chart. And then I know Bill was trying to capture, and I wasn't sure I captured it in this slide, but he was trying to capture, you know, has the fact that our test outcomes negatively, the budget has negatively impacted the achievement of students. And I think that's what he was trying to capture. And so I just took a look back, a 5-year achievement gap. We kicked out the at 1920, we weren't tested. So there's 5 years worth of data there. And if you look at it, right, I mean, it's outside of what happened last year in grade 3 in math, and those teachers knocked it out of the park. And students too, we're basically around the same, if not a little less, so. No big increases, no big improvement changes, and these are different cohorts of kids, so.
One of the things, we do have the savings and on Chris's slide here that he prepared for the Bradley, and then that was 1.14 million.
It's actually more than that.
Okay, well, let's capture that. He's got it down here that has provided the district with a cost avoidance over the past 4 years of 1.14. So if that's not a correct number,
Has provided plus in transportation and 2.016 in tuition.
oh, a
because that-
net of 3.156, okay. How about the 2 years that we've now picked up the transition program? We could also highlight that because we've saved money in that.
Kathleen, wasn't there a reduction in the number of vehicles as well?
Yeah, that's in here.
That's in there. That makes up the 2.156 that we've saved the town by instituting the Bradley program 5 years ago.
Okay, all right.
I'm suggesting the transition program. We've saved the town X amount of dollars. I don't know, but Chris would have that.
Yep.
I don't, assuming the cost of the buses saved the town, but that's in the lease. But I don't know how we quantify that. But we didn't have to buy 2 buses a year. Since we brought it 5 years ago.
Correct.
We were driving 19-year-old, 17, 19-year-old buses.
Yeah.
Instead of up to state-of-the-art safe buses with radios, with monitors, with cameras in the buses, something we never had as a town.
Right.
Because they kept kicking buses out of the budget every year. That was their first go-to, pick the $100,000 bus out of the budget every year.
And we had a repair technician as well, Kathleen.
Yes, we had a repair technician, you're right, we had our own mechanic that we had
Oh,
to pay
yeah.
for. But you gotta remember that within the cost of the lease is them buying the buses, but now it's in the school budget as opposed to the town's budget.
Right.
So we assumed the 200,000, 251,000 plus the mechanic's salary in our budget every year.
Correct.
Why was that changed?
Well, because we picked up the lease. And so within the lease, it's them keeping our buses current, up safety.
I mean, when the budgets were 2 separate budgets and that's how they were voted on, I think that would have been a problem for us, but now that they're one, I think it's probably.
Well, yes,
less
it doesn't,
so,
but
you know.
even if they were 2 budgets, it's one town paying. for the
Right,
2
no,
budgets.
absolutely,
So
right.
that was our point when we
Yeah.
did away with the 2
Yeah.
budgets. But it still shows on our budget right now.
Right.
And I don't know if Sean Brissett is on, okay, but he's the first one to point out when he was on the board that we assumed those costs
Yep.
into our budget because they're in the lease.
Actually. Right, and then the sale of the buses, and then,
And that's still sitting on the town side. We sold our old buses for 160,000 or something.
300, wasn't it?
Well, I don't remember the number, well, whatever number that was, the town kept that money.
The bottom line is that even though it's two, it really is, we're voting on one budget, but on
Yeah.
the BOE side, all the cost of student transportation fell on the BOE budget. And with no additional help. And next year, it'll have an even bigger impact because we will have an increase. We were just lucky that the bid process gave us a flat
For the regular bus.
for
yeah.
the regular
yeah.
buses this
Yeah,
year. So,
yeah. We were very lucky there. So I don't know how we quantify that. Also, the insurance coverage by uniting workers' comp and our liability and our insurance with the town. We did save money there. We also changed providers. We went to the state plan, and instead of having a 20% increase 2 years ago, we had 10%. We were supposed to get it. No, but the first year we did have the 8%.
8%, yeah, we did.
And then that last year we were supposed to have the 10 and we only got. We got a 12%, but we would have started out with a 20% increase and then gone up. From there.
So didn't we save some money by having one finance director for both the town and school?
Well, that was a town's decision and that's not exactly a school
No.
savings. That was a whole community town thing. And we had to fight we wanted to do it when, what's his name left?
Neil.
When you came in,
Oh, Neil.
Neil. We wanted to do it then and the Board of Finance would not let us do it.
So we're not saving any money on.
We are,
So
theoretically, we are, but it's not a real school savings, as the school did not initiate that, although we did back when. We tried to, Joe Lindley, and we went to bat then, but they wouldn't allow us to do it.
But I can say from working with Bill, it's really nice that one person understands both sides of the fence. And that there's not all this confusion like today. I got a little happy email that said, your 200K for Alliance came in. Because we have been holding off ordering something that we knew was gonna take months to come in, but we were just jumpy, right? Or I'm always jumpy about rather have the money in my hand before we go ahead and buy it. And so, but I knew that right away because Bill saw it and let us know. So there's so much better communication between the school department and the town. And when we look at things to purchase or we think about things, we say, well, what's the town doing for that? And then have a conversation. Is there a way to combine that? So I think that's our mindset now. And I think Bill brings that to the table because he knows the finances on both sides of the fence. So I think I think that was the smartest move that happened. Plus, we got the right person in the seat, so.
Well, that and sharing tech resources, we have the tech resources up here, and even though the town is paying them, it's not like we're duplicating.
And they benefit because some of the equipment can be recycled at the town, because I know when we initially took over on the town side, they had some really dated equipment and we had better stuff collecting dust on the shelves, right? So that we were able to upgrade that. But whatever Heather upgrades here, she also now does for the town. So the cybersecurity stuff is a big deal. And I think Bryce and Chris are working down at the town on trying to upgrade all of that stuff. So whatever we do here to benefit the school now to keep us current, the town is also getting that benefit. So I think that is a win. That works well.
So there are things that we can quantify for big savings that, like Steve asked. We're saving a lot of money. We're doing everything we can. We're going after grants.
Can we list the grants and what we've received?
A lot of them are federal grants, right? So they're the money is spent. This year we didn't get in, I mean, we got our 200K for Alliance, but, yeah, you know, there isn't any, we got the $10,000 from Verizon. We look and try to go after grants. Bill's doing that now. Another grant came through for CTE this morning that I'm sure the high school will be all over. It's just that I applied for a mental health grant and we didn't get it. I just found out last week. So, you know, that's disappointing. So, but yes, there are grants we can list. We've put them in the presentation before, but like, how long do you want this thing? Because we go back,
just lump sum it,
lump sum it.
lump sum it. Don't put every single grant. I know we used to have a whole page.
Yeah.
Just lump sum it. We received. X
Yeah,
amount
just to
of
show
money
the
in
town that
grants.
we are soliciting as many funds as we
Right,
can
and-
to
and-
offset their obligation.
Right.
You know,
And as far as, you know, don't give this, we don't need to give the whole calculation. We just saved 2.156 in 5 years by instituting the Bradley program. The transition program saved us over 2 years, X amount of dollars. Lump sum it, don't give calculations.
do you
Okay.
think that this Bradley slide is too confusing?
It might be,
Yeah.
yes. I just
I
say
won't-
how much we.
Yeah.
How much
Okay.
we saved by instituting the Bradley program. They know what the Bradley program is because we've explained it ad nauseum year after year after year.
The pie visual is always good, because people can relate to that.
Yeah, maybe just clean it up to make it simplified. I don't know.
Yeah, we could do that, but, yeah, we don't, I mean, the driver one is very important because it comes almost down to the 1.9 million. Rounds to the 1.9 million. That's important. Here are our major drivers. But under that, you could put, here is how over the years, the school has saved the town X amount of dollars by instituting these programs. We put in LED lighting. We've done, I don't know how much that's saving. It's, you know, if it's below 100,000 a bar or whatever, but you know. These are $1 million savings.
Kathleen, where do we stand right now? The way the budget is, what is the increase still, what was it, last week?
Yeah, the increase is, 1.9 million.
And what was the, Bill, what was the mill rate impact with the 1.9 million?
2.45 ton.
2.45, okay. All right, thank you.
Yep.
Do we know what the town is coming in at, Bill, for an overall?
Yeah, those meetings are still in process. The selectmen are meeting with, you know, weekly with multiple departments. And that's still coming together. Amy and I worked on the revenue side of it this earlier this week too. But we don't have a potential mill rate impact on the town side yet.
Okay, thanks.
All I can say is that you do see similar pressures. You know, a lot of the factors apply to both sides of the house. So, you know, unfortunately, I think we're gonna have our challenges on the town side too.
Well, all I can say is we've come to a crisis point. They have pushed and pushed and pushed and, you know, cut and cut and cut and cut, and then sometimes the balloon has to explode. And it's not off the coast of South Carolina.
One other question on the mill rate, Bill, is last year, I think the mill rate equal like 670 something thousand. Does that sound about right?
It was actually 749. This calculation uses Paul's latest, which is just under 770. So that has been updated.
All right, thank you.
Good question, though.
Yeah, it is. It's good to know that. Okay. So to impact this for we'd have to take, to get this down to 1.5545, we'd have to take 770,000 out of here.
Correct.
Not happening.
No, and even if we went into staffing and started to raise class sizes, which I do not recommend. you still are not gonna recoup that number.
No, no.
So I guess the challenge is gonna be, right, we're at 1.9 and we're still, I mean, if we end up getting all the 1.9, that's a great step forward. We're still not, I mean, let's face it. An ideal one would probably be 3 million, but we know that's not even gonna happen. Where do we go? You know, I mean, I'm just sitting here scratching my head saying, we don't have any more big acorns to go after. There's nothing that would make a substantial decrease to this budget without having an impact.
I think Bill Steglitz, when the board asked him to go back and really look at each individual salary, look at each individual healthcare plan and what that cost us. Any kind of, I'm not even going to use cushion because that's a bad word, but any kind of monies that might have been a little over calculated, that's all gone. That is absolutely gone. So like we just had a heating coil explode in, in the science lab up at the high school that cost us $6,300 to replace the floor. And Bill is physically fixing that unit and hopes he can tape it together and put it back in the ceiling and make it work again. But the bottom line is something like that happens, there's no money to fix it. So it's a real problem. I don't know.
You know, and let's face it, we've had some pretty mild weather for the last couple of years. Thankfully, because if we had a year like when we had to shovel off the roof and all that, our budget would be out of whack. You know, so fortunately, we've had some mild winters. One of these times we're going to have to bump that line up because we're not going to have mild winters every single year. You know, our heating costs, obviously we've gone into that, but this is alarming. It's not a good situation at all.
Because the needs of the students have increased. That is a clear indication with the increase of 504 and IEP plans, with the increase of students with social, emotional, and mental health issues. The services for students have increased. It's not the same as it was when I first started being an administrator. It's a lot harder. And the challenges are more complex.
Isn't an asset to show that in a slide or no?
Well, actually,
A third of our
Melinda,
budget costs.
Melinda, you point out a good spot there in Val, because last week, Dr. Jones stated to us that our, what is it, per pupil expense for any student with special ed, we've actually increased, what was it, the dollar amount increase for reimbursement, right, the level?
Oh, yes,
But the percentage of
correct.
reimbursement dropped. So we have to monetize that, because we've still done a very good job of monitoring and coming within budget on that. When we had a double whammy, you know, the level increased, but the reimbursement dropped. I'm not sure how we monetize that.
That one's tricky because it's by student, so.
Everyone's need are different.
But Val, you know, when you look at it on a tax-based side, it would be much worse just with that one factor from the state on the reimbursement, but we've been able to manage that accordingly. So there's technically a savings on our budget, but how do we show that?
maybe just like Chris had done and said, you know, that I forgot what it was, from 82,000 to
Right,
90,000,
90
whatever.
something.
And now they're only gonna reimburse this much. Maybe that's all you have to say.
Mhm.
Well, he's bringing more kids into the Bradley program. That's what's saving us the money.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
But the
If
town,
those 15 had to go out, that's what this chart is all about.
Mm.
You know, if those 15 had to go out. I don't know where we would have hit this wall sooner, I think.
Mm.
Yes.
Yeah, if they weren't in the Bradley program. We'd be sunk.
Do we know what the average cost is per student? General, I don't like using the term general population, but you like, what has that gone up year over year?
Yeah, it's around 17,000. I don't have the actual number in front of me. And if you look at it by district,
Yeah,
you know, we're probably slightly higher than some of our neighboring districts, but it all gets calculated in a funky way. So
yeah, that hasn't increased as much as I thought then, Melinda, because I remember, I think we were like 16.2 or 16.4 a couple years ago. So
Yeah,
that's
remember
not,
the guy that thought we were at 180 when we were actually at 18,000. Remember that guy?
yes,
So I think.
yeah,
part
that
of
was,
18, because he was saying it was 180,000, it was actually 18,000,
right.
because that's what he
Yeah.
was telling everybody.
Well, because they just divide the number of
Yeah.
kids that go to school here by the
budget number, yeah.
you know, which isn't.
yeah, that's not accurate.
No, not at all.
Looking at his chart to see if he had that calculation.
Melinda, can I ask you a question? So on the recent stuff that Governor Lamont just did, those 20 school districts where they gave 5 million in funding for
Yeah.
under competitive state grant program, particularly for mental health.
We didn't get it.
No.
So how were they, like, what was the criteria? And how
Well-
did they determine out of the school districts who got it?
Believe it or not, you had to put in like how many psychologists, how many social workers, how many support people you had.
Mhm.
And then they must have done some calculation versus the number of students, and those 20 must have had more need. You know, only one individual towards so many.
But didn't, I don't think was there maybe one in northeastern Connecticut and all the other 19
Yeah,
were?
Eastford.
And that's a big issue in general, that in mental health, I know of being on the Board for United Services. The disparity that occurs between the northern part of the state from Hartford to the southern is
Oh.
just, you can't fathom it. So when I saw that, I was
Yeah.
like, one in northeastern Connecticut,
There's another bucket of money, two more rounds of funding. The next one's supposed to come out next month. We'll obviously apply for it. I was disappointed we didn't get that one, but we'll try again. So, you know, maybe we'll be in that next bucket.
well, obviously, if the state is looking at mental health in children like they are, they know there's a problem. Right? We know there's a problem because of the numbers that we see, but they're obviously looking at to truly solidify the fact that there really is a mental health problem with kids.
There is, and you know, with lack of additional help, then we're bouncing those kids off of suspension, right? So Nate's number is now at 48. So he's gonna definitely pass 50, and we're a school-based diversion initiative district where we spent years studying on how to reduce our suspension rates, and we had done a nice job. And then COVID hit, and then I don't know, it's just, we have to keep everyone safe. And that really is what it boils down to, so.
Okay, do we have another meeting coming up?
Next
Yeah,
week.
Next week? Will
So
we have a-
So that,
No, but we have a Board of Ed. Do we have another?
Yeah.
Board of Ed. Okay,
The week after, I think.
yeah, week after, right?
No,
23rd,
not the 27th.
23rd is at 6
Okay.
o'clock. That's number 5 is on the 23rd.
23rd, that's it, 23rd.
so the numbers this packet
Yeah.
that Bill presented tonight,
Mhm.
that seems to be where we're
I think
basically
this is-
landing.
Yeah, I think this is where we're going to land. So now on the 23rd, we just need to nail down
This.
the presentation.
Okay, so we'll work on, I took good notes.
Okay.
We'll work on making some of those adjustments, and then Heather, when I get that survey, we'll start working on the survey. So that we can maybe even take a look at that on the 23rd. And then get it out.
When you do the survey, I'm kind of curious, how many questions are you thinking of roughly? Have you thought about that at all?
No, I don't know what Woodstocks look like.
Yeah, I can give, I printed it, but I.
You don't
I
want to
emailed it-
overwhelm.
I
people
emailed it to
either.
you
No,
again.
that's why I'm asking,
So it's-
because I think sometimes it can be
Oh,
too
you have
much.
it in hard copy?
Yeah, if it's too many people. won't
Some of it's
bother.
town related. And then there's school related, and we can make it more school related and less town, and had a bunch of stuff. And people could rate.
Aside from this survey, I would always love to see a survey. There's so many misconceptions about what we do good and what we don't do well.
Right.
I would love to see a survey after all this is said and done to our school community, parents specifically. We never know what some of them are thinking, like, and why they're thinking that. Is it misinformation that they receive? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you were a company, you'd ask, okay, how are we performing? What are we doing? What are we doing right? What do you think we're doing right? What do you think we're doing wrong? And sometimes the wrong is not really that you're doing something wrong, it's that they've interpreted from information that is not correct. So they assume that it's wrong. And I'm sure, Melinda, you put fires like that out all the time, that somebody will come across as saying something is done this way and that way within the school, and it may not be that.
You usually send me that because you read it on Facebook.
Well, that's why I said it,
Yeah,
because I know it's not true.
but
It needs to be addressed. I don't like things that are factually
know.
not correct. It drives me crazy.
Like, yeah, right.
we did do a baseline survey from parents around climate and, culture.
Yeah.
So we have that data, and then we're gonna survey parents again at the end of the year to see if there were any kind of shifts or improvements based on the attendance teams and the extra support that's in the schools and home visits when kids are, chronically absent. Is any of that impacting the climate and culture? We have the baseline. I didn't share all that baseline stuff with the board. I should get that together and share it. I don't think this is asking a whole different set of questions.
Right.
This
and we
goes-
want that
this
to-
one
that's
went out
different,
to the whole
something different
town.
anyway.
That
Yeah.
did,
Yeah.
this is a town-wide budget survey for Woodstock.
I wonder if Amy's interested in doing something.
Right.
Like
But
that.
like,
all that stuff.
people can rate, how important are fixing the roads to you? 1 to 5.
Well, that's.
How important is
that's what
sports
I'm
to
talking
you?
about,
1
like-
to 5. How important, like, just a bunch, and then you can say overwhelmingly, everyone basically thinks the roads need to be repaired. Overwhelmingly, everyone thinks
You have
sports
something
is
to back
important. Overwhelmingly, performance of the school is important to them, and it's like, you can at least,
Capture that.
right.
Yeah.
Now, when you did the survey before about climate, did percentage of
Yeah, how
families
many
that
answered that?
reported, was it
Is it like
good or not?
170, was it that high?
70 parents.
Yeah,
Yeah,
was it around that high?
it was. Yeah, it's been a while.
I have it on my desk.
Mm-hmm.
I refer to it every now and then when I'm writing a grant.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's right. I'll dig that out. It wasn't an overwhelming number, like half of our parents didn't respond.
That's
That's
the problem
typical.
with surveys. though.
Right.
Would the survey only go out to parents?
No.
Well, if it's a
This
townwide
was
one, it would be
townwide one.
townwide, and then maybe you could go on the town website and stuff, but the only thing that concerns me is people multiple replying, you know what I mean? So
How
as
do you
long as,
control it?
yeah, as long as there was a way to figure out.
Well, they have to give their email address, no? If they go online to the site for the town, wouldn't you add? Because that's the thing that I would be concerned about too, is someone's gonna.
Right, cause like this survey, I could have filled it out.
Tell them they'll get a $10 tax abatement if they fill it out.
Yeah, I don't know if Amy's interested in putting one together, but I'll speak to her and see if it's
Yeah.
something that she would like to do together.
We'll give him a support Turtle at School t-shirt. All right.
Vote yes sign.
Vote
And that's-
Hey, there you go. A free vote yes sign. I like that.
Just make sure those ground stakes are a little bit better.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay, but we'd have to talk to Amy and get her on board with that. But it was a good survey.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some stuff valuable.
All right, we have another round of citizens' comments.
All right, I'll have one more.
Okay.
That was referred to earlier conversation about changing, disciplinary issues that didn't seem to happen a while ago, but are like over thing. Is there a number of how many times the state police have called the school?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder how that compares to priority. I think that might be a.
I think too, that's a whole nother area, only because the protocols have changed, right? You have so many things you're dealing with within the complexities that you have to call for safety at least, right?
Correct. So, yeah, things that when I first became an administrator, if some kid said an off-color comment, I'm gonna shoot you or something like that. I wouldn't have responded the way we respond now. That is an immediate call to Truth Be. That is an immediate call to DCF. That is an immediate risk assessment on our part, and there is a cost associated with that. So those are immediate responses, and then the internal things that we do. So yes, we respond to crisis or comments and behaviors a lot differently than we did when I first became a principal. And primarily because of the world we live in and what we've seen. So yes, it's different. And that's why I say the needs of the students have increased, but the resources haven't caught up with that. So
Linda, to Steve's comment, is it a HIPAA violation if we also posted how many time an EMS was called?
I don't know if I can give that specific, like the 211 calls,
Yeah,
but I don't know necessarily. I'll look into that. That might not be
well,
interesting.
that I'm just thinking more of support on the mental health side of our budget.
I can tell you how many risk
Well, also the time
assessments we've
adjustment.
done over the past couple of years. Those have increased significantly.
Maybe that might be the number then.
But the number of state police calls, I'm sure Troop D could give us that easily, and I'm sure in the incident reports, we have, I can count them up for this year and even probably last.
It's just a way to help communicate the changing nature of education.
It is.
Not only costly, but very disruptive, of course.
Time disruptions. Staff disruption,
Oh, yeah.
education, teaching disruption. It's a lot.
It does sound bleak, but there are some good things happening, and luckily I get to see it. But there are some really refreshing things. Met with the principals this week to go over their evaluations, which is all tied to data, and to see the work that's happening on the backside. I'm very pleased to see the work that everyone's doing, and everybody's rowing in the same direction. Nobody likes having a bad classification or a designation. It doesn't make us feel good as educators, like we're failing kids. That's what it seems like, right? And none of our teachers, I feel good about that, especially when they work hard all day, but know that there is good work happening out there. And, I'm optimistic. I'm extremely optimistic that we're going to turn this whole thing around and we won't be in this situation. But along with that, we need help from the community. You know, the community spent a great deal of time putting together the portrait of a graduate. That's the driving force behind our district. That's what we believe as 500 stakeholders in this town. What our schools students should look like when they graduate. If that's what your community believes in, then they have to support that. And with that comes money. And that's the bottom line.
That's always been one of the problems. The state always turns around and more mandates are put on us, but they don't give you the money.
They don't.
But you've got to figure out how, you know? It's terrible.
I think personally too, I also on the flip side is with all that's gone on within the school districts all over, ours included, is I worry about the mental health of the teacher. You know what, I mean, we've probably been fortunate that none of them have had to go out on leave, but I think sometimes you can be at that crisis point where a teacher is suffering as well. And so I worry as a Board of Ed person, the morale. I mean, you can only have so much gas in you to keep fighting the fight, right? Sure. At some point, the bubble can burst with that too. And I feel bad that I think teachers are under a tremendous amount of stress. They want to do a good job. They have their own families and they're dealing with a lot of issues even with their own kids. But I also, I have great concern for that as well.
Our teachers have been pretty dedicated in their attendance over the COVID mess, and even till this day is pretty remarkable. So we don't have a whole lot of teacher absence issues. I mean, obviously, there are days when people get sick and everybody gets the flu, and then we have those issues, but primarily they've been here through this whole thing. And because they know when they're not here, the students don't get quality instruction. I mean, you could have the best sub, but it's just not the same. So yeah, they have been pulling their weight, and I do worry about them because there is we're implementing a lot of new things and new changes, and with that does come some anxiety because they want to do a good job. So. Thank you. Motion to adjourn.
You've got it.
I'll second it.
Danielle. Hey, everybody.
I won't be at Monday's meeting.
See you Monday.
Yeah, have a good night, everyone.
I probably will try to